For those people who did not serve in the war or came back early, they were starting to have families in, say, 44, 45, that era. And so by the time they got to be going to elementary school, the population just exploded. So at a certain point in time, there were just too many kids wanting a high school education. So people said, hey, it's time to build a high school here in the West Island.
I believe the English public school system and its legacy are endangered. From an era before my own where they couldn't be built quick enough to serve its growing surrounding communities, to an era where they seem to be disappearing with every new school year. And if they are gonna disappear, well, there's nothing myself nor this modest video can do to prevent that. But what I hope this video could possibly do is to start a conversation about the legacy of one particular school before it suffers a possible fate. The story of the legacy of this school is not just found within the walls of its building, but is part of a greater story of the neighborhood it was built in, right here, in the area known as the Lakeshore, in the western part of the island of Montreal. In its heyday, when most of this area had just finished being developed from farming community to suburb, an English public school was just a stone's throw away from wherever you lived. But if you look at a map from the end of World War II, this was your choices of schools.
There were only 3 elementary schools where people went to school in the English community anyway. One in Beaurepaire, one in Valois, and Cedar Park in Point Claire.
The few number of schools was just enough to service the English-speaking population who had been living in these areas since the beginning of the 20th century. Though it gets complicated because at that time, elementary school could have ended at 7 or 8 or 6.
I went to Beaurepaire Elementary from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Depending on the size of the school, where the school was, and how close you lived to a high school.
And then grade 6, grade 7 was Valois Park.
And at that time, no one lived close to a high school.
Then I went to grade 8 at Cedar Park.
Which is why it's complicated, and that bowl of spaghetti's for another video.
Doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense, but that's where they went.
So that covers those who were of elementary school age. But what if you were of high school age living in this area?
Then if they wanted to finish their high school years, they had to go to Montreal West.
All the way over here in Montreal West, to Montreal West.
So they'd take the train, or usually the train. The bus system wasn't that great at the time, but there was a bus line that went right from Point Claire right up through Montreal West, and you could take it if you wanted to, but most of the kids took the train in.
Now in Point Claire alone, in just 5 years, from 1948 to 1953, the population had doubled. The community was growing, and parents were beginning to be a little concerned about sending their kids all the way to Montreal West for high school, when there was plenty of land and plenty of room for us to have a high school of our own. And that's when rumors began of a plot of land to be purchased here in Point Claire, somewhere. And those rumors ended up being true because on July 29th, 1953, an 18-acre plot of land was sold to the Point Claire and Beaconsfield School Board under the chairmanship of Lindsay Place for $50,000. The intention was to use this land for a high school, playing fields, and possibly an elementary school. This was a new area for development, brand new, so new that St. John's wasn't even paved yet. There weren't sidewalks, the residential streets weren't even paved yet. It was a blank slate to be built upon, and for a short while, this area would become the new center of the Lakeshore. In Point Claire and Beaconsfield alone in 1953, children of high school age summed up to 285 students spanning grades 8 through 11. However, this number pales in comparison to the number of students who were about to be of high school age within the next few years. Because on the elementary school side of things, the classic 3 schools soon became insufficient as well. The post-war boom was happening. And by October of 1953, just 3 months after the purchase of the land for a high school and a possible elementary school, the elementary school construction became necessary. Now, the building itself for this precious new high school was designed by Barrett, Marshall, Montgomery, and Merritt. And this group would go on to build this, and this. Their design, which would cost $1.5 million to build, would be fully equipped. It would have 35 classrooms with 32 students per classroom, averaging about 1,050 students total, I think. I went to John Rennie. It would have specialty rooms, would serve as the headquarters for the school board, and would take 12 to 15 months to build. And these designs were approved October 20th, 1953. So when did the residents of the Lakeshore get to see what this brand new high school is going to look like? Well, it was published on the front cover of the Lakeshore News, July 15th, 1954. The company who won the tender was JRHS Houston Limited, and ground was broken early summer 1954, changing the landscape of Lakeside Heights and Point Claire and the Lakeshore indefinitely. Finally, in 1955, the day had come to open the brand new school. The first school, the best school, the trend-setting school that would service every teen student from Beau Repair to Dorval. At the top of the hill, shining, they needed a big name to fit this momentous moment in this area's history. And what was it going to be named? Well, that you'll have to wait for next week. But you probably know it. You probably said it. I think I said it a couple times. You can write it in the comments below. But who was he? That you'll have to wait for next week. But you can probably Google it or Wikipedia it. But I probably found something that you don't know about him. And that's for next week.